Welcome back. In this episode of Oxygen Not Included, we're going to be taking another look at creating a very large farm for large populations of duplicants. In the last video, I covered this enormous sort of mealwood farm right here, which had some success here and there. However, it has very high demanding requirements. So I put the question to you guys, and you guys responded with many different recommendations of how to make very, very large farms for large populations. We're talking 30 plus duplicants in some of these cases. So looking at your comments, many of you guys were commenting all about Sleet Wheat. Sleet Wheat is the key to success for large farms. Like Topani's comment right here. Sleet Wheat is the way to go. Smaller farm size necessary, and frost buns are really cheap to make regarding resources, which is another dynamic of what we're looking at here once we start to look at Sleet Wheat. And that is the fact that Sleet Wheat here has to be refined in the cooking station, or shall we say it has to be baked in the cooking station in order to make frost buns right there, which have 1,000 calories. So today's system is going to be not only just growing a lot, but also making a mass production kitchen right here so that we can make at least 50 frost buns a day. So there's going to be a little bit more stuff that we got to do. Ethan, along with many other people here, we're talking about that Sleet Wheat is so easy to make. All you have to do is put a simple planter box in a cold biome, and then it should grow all by itself. The reason Sleet Wheat is so easy to grow is that each unit that comes off of that when you harvest it, for example, 25 Sleet Wheat grains on standard yield, will give you 25 seeds basically that you can replant and grow another Sleet Wheat unit. So if you can make it all the way to a harvest, boom, you can suddenly have a very large farm. So unlike meal lice or bristleberries or the pinch of pepper nut, all of those require a little bit more effort in order to get seeds out of it. But the Sleet Wheat is very easy. So looking at Sleet Wheat here, we can see that for one standard yield right there, that can give us a potential of 8,000 calories right there. So that is 24 units because you're going to replant one of those. And each one of those seeds effectively has about 333 calories in it. The reason being is that you're going to cook that into a frost bun right down here, and that is a requirement of 3 grains, or Sleet Wheat grains, in order to make that happen. Another way of looking at that is that each standard harvest of one of these plants can feed 8 duplicants for one day. If you can get up to good, you can do 16, and you can do both of those in a planter box. However, you have to add fertilizer and potentially some irrigation if we want to get up to excellent. And you can see that the numbers there go from 25 to 50 to 75. So it's a lot more expensive to go up to excellent. So unless you have extra resources, I don't think I'm going to focus on that. All right, so looking at this giant mealwood farm right here, the two things that we can control as far as planter boxes go is temperature and air pressure. So those are two things I want to try to do because I want to get a nice good yield, just like I'm getting out of here. I want to see if I can get that up to a good yield. Okay, so several of you guys were talking about how simple it is to grow Sleet Wheat. So many of you are saying, well, you just take planter boxes and you stick them over here in a cold biome and boom, it grows just like that. Real easy. You go and just plant Sleet Wheat. The temperature it needs just for a standard grow right there is negative 55 degrees Celsius, which is very, very cold. I haven't found any biome that's that cold. Up to 5 degrees Celsius. And you can see inside of here, it's negative 26. The sweet spot for this, in order to get that from standard yield to good yield, is going to be from negative 40 to 35 degrees Celsius right there, which is a little bit colder than most biomes I've seen. So if we look in here, we can see this is negative 21 degrees Celsius, negative 30, so that's close. 35 up there, so that's actually really quite cold. That'd be a good spot for one. 25. So a lot of these are close, but not quite. One of the things that we can use to drive the temperature down without using energy is planting wheezeworts. So one of the cool things about wheezeworts is that you can plant them now in flower vases as compared to trying to like drag the seed around and drop it. So that happened here in the agricultural update. So you place down a flower vase and then you can select wheezewort right there as long as you have a seed available. So you might have to dig some of these up to get seeds and really dig around inside of these cold biomes in order to find them. So you can see over here there's just 2 of them. But I'm going to try to use wheezeworts in order to drop the temperature down inside of the rooms where these Sleet Wheats are going to be. And the nice thing about the Sleet Wheats is that, you know, they won't require fertilizer. So once you plant it, you don't really have to come back for another 20 cycles. So the other half of this equation is pressure, right? So I normally use the pump on the outside. Maybe it's somewhere in like oxygen production, but then it pumps the oxygen into the farm right here. Now I think what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna make oxygen inside the farm and then let it exhaust out. So rather than go the opposite direction, we're just gonna keep the air, boom, right where it needs to be, and then we'll exhaust it out later. Third thing that I gotta cover here is we have to find a way to store food in such a way that it is refrigerated. In order to store lots of food, what we're gonna do is store it in carbon dioxide. We can also use the cold environment to refrigerate food as well. So as James and Samsonite were talking about here, you can place this in tiles at the bottom of your farm and then just store the food down there. And Samsonite was saying, well, you can use fridges because they actually store more food, but just don't run any power to them because it's already a refrigerated environment. So that's pretty cool. We'll try that out. Okay, so one thing I'm gonna need to know is just how long does it take to cook a frost bun? So I'm gonna queue one of these up and see how long it takes. All right, so Meep is cooking this guy up right now. I'm running a little bit of a timer over here just to see how long it takes. Obviously, I'm gonna have more than just the bare minimum, but I have an idea. All right, so about roughly 40 seconds. So I know from previous experiments that one entire cycle is 600 seconds. And of that, 525 of those is daytime. So let's talk about travel time. Say it takes 25 seconds to get over there. So I leave myself with 500 seconds. Divided by 40 means that I can make about 12.5 of these in a single day. I need 50. Therefore, I need at least 4 cooking stations. So I'll make 5. Alright, so here's my farm setup. As you can see here, I have a lot of just very simple planter boxes. And I'm also placing Wheezworts on either side right here in order to really cool down this environment. For the insulated tiles, I am using Abyssalite, trying to keep in mind that this might end up being some sort of unit that doesn't necessarily have to be in a cold biome. However, I am making it in a cold biome because that's where you get all your seeds from. Not to mention it gives you a nice kickstart as far as the temperature goes. And you can see in here there are some things that, as I've created them, are a little bit warm, so they're gonna be cooling down. Things have to cool down before I plant. Will 8 Wheezworts be enough? I'm not 100% sure. Right down here at the bottom, I have a place for food. So I've got a bunch of meal ice and everything that's being stored in there right now. And this should get down to temperature to where it's naturally refrigerated, so I don't have to run power to these. Over here on the bottom right, I have both an algae deoxidizer and an electrolyzer if I wanted to use either one of those. I can. But the idea is to fill this area with oxygen. So I'm actually going to enable this one over here and just use the algae deoxidizer in this case. If I needed to, I could sort out hydrogen here at the top and then pump it away using a pressure switch probably. The concept as far as how the oxygen is going to flow, the idea is that I'm going to have a lot of oxygen inside of here. Maybe I will produce a little bit more oxygen at the top as well. Maybe the bottom right isn't the right idea. But the oxygen flow, once we get everything planted, this should be full of oxygen over here and then move on up through the cooking station. And then I have some ceiling lamps and also some canvases and stuff like that, so it's a little bit nicer there. But this should warm up the air because your cooking stations are going to give off a decent amount of heat, as well as your lamps, just to kind of keep everybody happy. So there should be some temperature increase right here, and potentially I'll get some oxygen flowing out the bottom down here. That's the idea. We'll have to see how that all works out. Alright, so this very first cycle here, we can see a lot of oxygen is being produced. So that's good. Starting to move this carbon dioxide out of the way, and it'll eventually sort out here to the bottom. Like it should filter down here. It actually wasn't that hard to find about 8 Wheezworts. You'd only have to go through about 2 different cold biomes in order to find 8, unless they're small. I guess another thing I could add here is a couple of mess tables. That way it's close to the food. So this might be a good place for like the chefs to eat. You can see the temperature now is starting to even out a little bit. It's not quite cold enough, but it is starting to even out. It seems like the pressure inside of this area is still struggling to figure itself out. So I tell you what, I'm gonna start changing this a little bit. Rather than just using normal tiles, I'm gonna use gas permeable. Actually, you know what? That's the same cost as mesh tile, so I'm gonna use mesh instead. High quality. I mean, it is like your entire survival depends on it, so. Let's see if I can teleport into the future here to see just how long it might take, if it's even possible for these Wheezeworts to make things cold enough. Okay, so I can see here that it seems like this oxygen plant is actually working, so there's a lot of oxygen over here, quite a bit of it, and it seems to be forcing out, you know, from this area, finding its way over here, and actually coming out the bottom. The temperature that it's coming out at, though, is really not anything too impressive. Okay, so after a few more cycles, we can see that it's now down to about negative 12 degrees Celsius in some places right there. So in order to make sure that it doesn't get too cold, I'm going to install a couple of lamps up here. And I can also install the same sort of system right down here at the bottom. So then I can put a thermal switch right next to this stuff and then plug power into that. And that way, nothing here. That way, if we can get it down to the right temperature, we can leave it in the sweet spot. So if the temperature on this thing drops below negative 37 degrees Celsius, we can start warming it up a little bit, because that sweet spot is from negative 40 to negative 30. Alright, so I'm not quite down to temperatures just yet, but I want to see how this works. So let me go ahead and start planting some sleet wheat, and, you know, we'll start growing some stuff. One of the things I'm going to want to keep over here is the sleet wheat. I'm going to want to make sure that it stays nice and cold. So I can take the sleet wheat grain and I'll make that a nice high priority. So should be a lot of stuff in this storage compactor. So that makes sense. I have storage compactors for the sleet wheat and then for the food as well. Alright, so there we go. I got everything planted here, and some of these, for some odd reason, are struggling with stiffened. Apparently it's toasty surroundings, which doesn't really make sense because everything is, you know, relatively cold. But I guess it's just above 5 degrees. We'll see if that settles out. I did have a lot of duplicants run around in here, like a lot, and they all died. Most of them died right by the outhouse, interestingly enough. I even had a duplicate nice bit over here who was surviving off of the corpses. So what she would do is she would attack the morbs and then eat the morbs. So as the more morbs are spawning, that's what she's eating, and then living off of the polluted oxygen that's been created. It was kind of funny. She was a real-life cannibal. There's an idea for a new challenge, huh? Alright, so I think it's fair to say that I need more Wheezeworts in order to keep this nice and cold and functional. The introduction of all that sleet wheat kind of brought the temperature up in this entire area here. Okay, so how did Ada suffocate right next to the oxygen production machine right here? How does that even happen? Okay, so out of curiosity, I'm going to block off this here so that there should be no oxygen that's moving from here to over there. It should all just be one unit. Let's see what happens with that. So like the only possible explanation for what's going on right now is that these plants are giving off heat as they're growing. A little heat, but enough to make it toasty. Alright, so let's try to move some of these Wheezeworts to the center here. Well, it seemed to have a little bit of an effect. This used to be all hot, so there might be a better pattern for these Wheezeworts. You might have like 5 planter boxes, then a Wheezewort, and then another 5. And that might be how you have to set this up. So I think I can safely answer that this manual airlock over here did nothing for this design. I just got to rearrange everything. Alright, well, failure is always an option. So let's turn this around and make something good out of it, huh? Alright, so here we go. Got all of these Wheezeworts running now. Trying to make this place nice and cold. That's the hopes. There we go. So I got a duplicant over here. All he's doing is just confined to this space right here, so he actually can't get out. Just planting it up. It is possible to actually make this, and there was a comment talking about this, as far as having people that are just doing the cooking and the farming, being isolated to this area using some doors. It's probably not a bad idea. Alright, so that seemed to do the trick right there, putting those Wheezeworts more in the middle. You can see the temperature of the sweet wheat here, and of the planter box. Look at that, negative 17 degrees Celsius. That's really good stuff. Alright, well this seems to be working as intended right there. I like it. I think the one thing I would do is add a little bit of a liquid pump down here, just in case people make a mess, I can get rid of this polluted water and it's not right next to my refrigerator. Because that's not what I really want. Besides that, this seems to be working really good. It doesn't ever seem to be getting below 15 degrees Celsius here at the top though. So I wouldn't expect anything but a standard yield out of this. And that's a little bit disappointing, but you can't have everything, right? Alright, so last night I spent some time running this experiment through about 30 more cycles, but with 49 duplicants in this space. It took quite a bit of time, so I didn't record all of that. Here's what I've learned. The farm itself can produce the amount of food that you need. The cooking stations also produce a whole lot of frost buns in a single day, especially when you target your duplicants' jobs to do exactly what they're best at doing. So I made all the people that were best at cooking, cook, and the people that are great at delivering, deliver. So from that standpoint, everything worked well. But there's also a dysfunctional side to this. So there's two parts to that. One is that I have 49 duplicants in here and most of them don't have a job to do. And for whatever reason, these duplicants really like to stay over here in the freezer box where it's really cold and the decor is absolutely horrible. So they not only suck up all the oxygen that's in this space, causing these plants to run at low pressure, which stinks, they're also stressing themselves out constantly. So isolating people away from this space is probably a really good idea, especially if you're going to run one large farm right here. The other key dysfunction is that even though there's food that's available, for whatever reason, people are starving. Now, I would think that that would be because somebody else is already trying to make a path to pick up that food, so it's already been assigned to somebody else. But the truth is that doesn't really seem to be the case. I've teleported the food around, I've kind of moved it, I've made more of it, and some duplicants down here are just lost when it comes to finding food. So the layout or the proximity of food to where the bulk of the duplicants need to be, I think is something that needs to be addressed. I've tried to make people move the food into the refrigerator down here in the base where, you know, these duplicants just spend most of their time in a more comfortable area. But I can't even get the duplicants to move the food. So I don't know, a little bit of like buggy dysfunction is going on there. Alright, so what have I learned from this experiment? Well, I've learned a couple of things. Having a very large farm in general, again, even though I tried it for a second time here, it doesn't really seem to function quite as well as it would seem. You can get a lot of food into a small area, you know, relative, but you do run the risk of having a lot of problems with it. So I'm changing my mindset to where I like a more modular system, right? So let's say we were to take this cooking station right here and then just have a small farm right next to it and have that be all one unit with a little oxygen production at the end so it has its own pressure. Take that sort of thing and then multiply that out several times throughout the base, but also keep it within a proximity of where the rest of your duplicants are going to spend their time. That way people aren't trying to travel all the way from here way up to some one place to get some food. Try to spread that out because you got a lot of people that are moving around and you don't want a bunch of travel time just to get some food. So I think that's one good takeaway right there. I've also heard some more feedback from you guys as far as how many Sleet Wheats per Wheezewort I have, and it seems to be a more 3-to-1 ratio right there. So this is pretty close. But it doesn't mean that I can't use duplicants to cool this down a little bit more using a thermal regulator. The one thing that's become completely apparent to me right now is that I have a ton of duplicants, and therefore I can run a whole lot of hamster wheels, instead of trying to just rely completely on natural gas. So while this experiment doesn't work in a full-scale sort of setup right here just yet, I would still consider it a success because I was able to grow a lot of food and I was able to do it in a very efficient way. So thank you guys for all of your recommendations, for targeting me at Sleet Wheat and also giving me some ideas of how to optimize this setup. The next step here is taking this and rolling it into my campaign to see just how it works in more of a real game. That's the Super Duper Duplicant Challenge. At any rate, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it somewhat informative, let me know down there in the comments section below. And also thank you guys for all of your comments and your support recently. It's been absolutely awesome. I've never seen numbers so big here on YouTube, so it's really, really exciting. So thank you guys for watching. If I've earned your subscription, then thank you so much for that. Hopefully I'll see you again next time. Stay awesome, guys. Peace. Brothgar out.